This week on The Record, markets tremble in the wake of President Trump's trade war against the entire world. Trillions of dollars disappear, reappear, and trade hands as the world reevaluates buying and selling with American business partners. What the turmoil could cost you. Democrats push to retake control of Congress with an eye on the St. Louis suburbs. How will Congresswoman Ann Wagner respond to calls for her to meet voters face to face? Council wars take a sharp turn. Voters deny the St. Louis County Council a powerful weapon to punish Executive Sam Page's picks for top jobs. A new era at City Hall. St. Louis elects a new mayor. What Kara Spencer plans to do in her first 100 days. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Mayor-elect Kara Spencer swears the oath of office in a hurry Tuesday. The short transition period putting Spencer under pressure to announce top cabinet picks in a hurry. She met reporters on the City Hall steps Thursday afternoon.
We've hit the ground running. We're getting to work. We're working on our cabinet positions. We're working on our staffing positions, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for the press to ask some questions here today.
How long until the fences come down?
Well, we're working on that. I mean, I think that's going to be built with partnership with some of the folks providing services to the unhoused community, making sure we're all working in concert together. But that's something that's at the top of our list, Mark, and we're working on that.
Can you describe the plan on what that would look like? Because there are not encampments, but people
Sure.
that are occupying space just nearby still.
Absolutely. So that's exactly why we're going to be working with the providers of the unhoused community, make sure that we're working in concert with each other.
In our first full interview with him since he was sworn in, Congressman Wesley Bell is now on the record. Congressman, good to have you with us. What did you make of this election result, and what do you anticipate or hope for in a Kara Spencer administration?
As always, whoever is sitting in that seat is someone that we're going to work with. I think it's important that as a region, and particularly a region with 88 municipalities plus the city, I think it's even more important and integral to this region thriving, that we all work together. And I have every expectation that I'll be able to work well with the mayor-elect and the comptroller, for that matter, and whomever is in those roles.
Certainly a lot of transition in St. Louis politics these days. Looking, though, to the economy for a moment, the stock market, the turbulence on Wall Street, and then the pain to small business owners and consumers. What are you seeing coming out of the White House right now? I'm
seeing what I've talked about before, this chaos. This is the Trump chaos tax. There are unforced repercussions to all of these misguided positions that the administration takes. And what I'll say is every administration has the right to implement their agenda, but work with us. If you are really looking to address the trade market around the world, if you're looking to address fraud and abuse, you're not going to get any pushback from Democrats. We just want to make certain that it's being done in a practical way that actually addresses these issues.
Should Congress reassert its power and pull in the reins from this president on the power to slap tariffs on the entire world?
Mark, that's called Congress doing its job. Absolutely. That we have the power of the purse. And unfortunately, House Republicans have chosen to vacate that and just go along with the administration, as opposed to being a check on the executive as we're supposed to be.
How much will those tariffs cost you? We checked the record of trade imports and found under these current conditions, tariffs in place as they are now with the larger trade war pause, the average Missouri household could potentially spend about $3,700 more a year. And what about those big money moves on Wall Street?
When the president sends out a tweet saying it's time to buy, you can bet his friends who are in the know are buying. I think it deserves the closest scrutiny.
I think any idea of insider trading is ridiculous.
Let's get a local member of Congress about that exchange right after the break. President Donald Trump's on-again, off-again trade war continues to send tremors through Wall Street. At last report, the president paused his plan to tax all foreign imports for 90 days, except for China. Those tariffs he ratcheted up to 125%. The announcement itself sending the stock market surging in the middle of the week, with the S&P 500 skyrocketing more than 9.5%, marking its biggest one-day gain since 2008. That announcement came in a social media post from President Trump while the nation's trade representative was testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee.
Are you aware that the tariffs have been paused?
I am, yes.
When were you made aware of that?
Well, I understood the decision was made a few minutes ago. It's something
Sitting
that's
here-
been under discussion.
Sitting here, under discussion. So did you know that this was under discussion, and why did you not include that as part of your opening remarks?
So typically what I don't do is divulge the contents of my discussions with
What are the
President
details of the
Congress.
pause?
Well, my understanding is that because so many countries have decided not to retaliate, we're going to have about 90 days.
No, excuse me? China increased their tariffs on the United States. Trump blinked.
Well, the details, as I understand it, is that China continues to retaliate. Other countries didn't retaliate. The president 2 or 3 days ago said we wanted to negotiate with those countries that asked for meetings. That's what we're doing.
What are the
We've had
details?
discussions.
How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've
So
been
the
in this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have. I've
And
just
yet
been in the
he's-
hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet? WTF? Who's in charge?
The president of the United States is in charge.
Let's take a closer look at how all this could impact you and your wallet. Now turning to Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski, who joins us on the record. Good to have you back with us remotely this time. When you look at these wild swings on the stock market, and then you look at some of your colleagues, House Democrats, who are questioning the Treasury, the Trade Secretary, who knew this was coming before it happened, what assurances can you give voters in our area that Congress can hold this administration accountable with oversight to make sure there's no funny business going on in these wild swings in the market?
Well, it's really challenging. I mean, given that the House Republicans and this administration are hell-bent on creating uncertainty in our markets with the implication, or with the application, I should say, of these tariffs across the board. We saw just yesterday, as you know, Mark, the president made a big decision in pulling off a significant number of the tariffs that he had imposed, because I think he saw what was happening to the stock market. And so, you know, the erraticness of this administration, the high level of uncertainty is creating pain points with working families. We're going to see costs rise. I'm talking to my farmers. As you know, I have a very agrarian economy, a lot of agriculture in my district, and they are feeling the effects right now. Working people are feeling the effects as they look at their retirement accounts and they're seeing what's happening with the stock market. So I can tell you I'm doing everything I can to call this out, to try to hold this administration accountable. But with a Republican lock on the Senate, the House, and the White House, you know, what we can do is call it out, but we're not in a position in the minority to pass anything to fight this back.
Well, perhaps there are a number of Senate Republicans who have looked at a proposal to rein the presidential tariff powers back in. Congress gave the president these powers. Should Congress take them back?
Yes, they should. And actually, that's an excellent point. I've signed on to legislation that Congressman Gregory Meeks is actually introducing that would emphasize and scale back. The president is saying that he's declaring an emergency, a national emergency. And because of that national emergency declaration, he's claiming to have the unilateral authority to put these tariffs on countries all across the globe. This is typically something that Congress has a role in playing and helping to work with the White House to set those types of high levels of tariffs that we know are going to increase costs for working families. But what we're seeing is this administration totally ignoring that, as they're ignoring a lot of different legislative branch authority right now and trying to make unilateral decisions that are hurting working families. So I'm proud to be supporting legislation in the House, along with bipartisan colleagues in the Senate, to push back on this and to restate our authority as legislators to having a role in how these tariffs are set.
To this point in the conversation, we've been describing the downside of this policy. I wonder if you see any merit to some of the upside. You've been very close with trades, labor unions. Some of them want to see a more industrialized, manufacturing-based economy, reshoring of those jobs. To what extent are tariffs an effective tool to pursue that policy? And is there some way Congress can steer the president toward a policy that helps Americans here?
Yeah, well, it's a very important question, Mark. I'm very proud to represent Granite City, which employs thousands of steel workers, United Steelworkers, that make Granite City steel work. So I'm trying to do everything I can to have continued investment in that plant. I think China has been a very bad actor in dumping cheap steel into our markets, bringing down the cost of American made steel, hurting our steel workers. And so I do think that tariffs, if applied strategically, and that is what is really key, strategically to countries like China that have been bad trade actors, I could support selective prescriptive trade or tariff on countries like China. But then when you look at countries like Canada, where we have positive trade relationships, that's just eroding the trade partnerships that I know my farmers are relying on, consumers are relying on, and we don't want to see what is going to happen in the approach that this administration has taken with tariffs is increased costs for working people. What I find to be so frustrating is when President Trump took office on January 20th, he told the American people his number one priority was going to be to decrease the cost of goods in this country, make groceries more affordable, make gas more affordable. But what we're seeing with tariffs and his approach to tariffs is it's only going to lead to higher prices.
I know we're looking a lot at the prices side and the tariff policy, the stock market. There's also the tax cuts and the spending cuts that House Republicans just put through. You voted against it. One, is that a tough vote when you look at that, and what would be the impact, do you think, of this policy should the Senate and President sign it into law?
It's not a tough vote for me when Republicans are trying to propose $880 billion worth of cuts to Medicaid to some of the most vulnerable folks in my communities, seniors, those with disabilities. These are working people struggling to get by. That Medicaid is a stopgap, a little bit of assistance that helps ensure that they get the health care and the assistance that they need. It wasn't hard for me to vote no on a House Republican proposal that would cut SNAP by $230 billion. When we're seeing this administration apply tariffs that we know are going to lead to higher prices.
Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We've heard from a couple local Democrats on the Hill. Well, their campaign strategists, national Democrats, think they have a decent shot at taking the Speaker's gavel and control of the House in the upcoming midterm elections. And they think voters in the St. Louis suburbs might just help them do that. So much so, they threw down a gauntlet challenging Congresswoman Ann Wagner this week to meet her voters face to face. Take a look at this sharply worded statement from the chair of the DCCC. Ann Wagner is running scared, they say, and she should be, from tanking the economy, gutting Medicaid, and abandoning our veterans to making everything more expensive. They say she's broken her promises to Missourians, and it's going to cost Wagner her seat. Why are Democrats claiming that she's running scared? Well, one reason could be that she didn't show up here to this so-called town hall. Now, to be fair, she never agreed to show up. She didn't organize it. In fact, rather, it was hosted by her political opponents as an illustration to try and define or depict her as absentee. We're seeing that same tactic play out across the country, and we've seen reports from top national Republican strategists telling their GOP candidates steer clear of those kinds of open, risky forums. The question still rings true. Is Congresswoman Wagner available and accessible to her voters? What would it take for her to answer questions from the public or the press? She might tell you that the portrayals from Democrats aren't quite true. I don't know. I'd like to ask her. It is worth noting, it's been 962 days since she last agreed to take questions from this reporter. It was a few weeks after the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade. So in a story about student loan debt forgiveness, where I was also quoting her Democratic opponent at the time, I asked her here about Missouri's abortion ban. Since then, her congressional communications staffer has declined at least 10 direct requests for interviews. Just to check that record, in the same time span, Republican Senator Eric Schmitt has been on this very program 10 times. Wagner's spokesman brushed off the DCCC's challenge, saying, quote, "She has handily beaten radically liberal DCCC candidates before and will do it again in 2026.
Of course, that's only if she survives a primary challenge. My angle in all this, the same as this guy, Tim Russert's. You can't make tough decisions unless you answer tough questions. That's the opportunity this program will always provide to politicians willing to answer them. We're back in a moment. Let's check in on local government. St. Louis County voters dealt a blow to the county council, denying them a weapon to punish County Executive Sam Page's cabinet members this week. Prop B would have allowed the council to fire top cabinet officials, typically seen as nonpartisan bureaucrats. Both sides, campaigning for and against this fight, used public money to either put the question on the ballot or to try and persuade voters of what its impact might be. The county executive had previously tried to block that question from ever appearing on the ballot. The county council used Rams settlement money to try and fund that countywide ballot initiative, claiming that Prop B would make the county executive's office more accountable to the public. Page took a bit of a victory lap the morning after voters decided.
Prop B was bad. Voters agreed it was bad for the county. It was bad for the operations of county government.
I think I can say this for the council. I think we're all disappointed in the outcome, but at the same time, I've been doing this for quite a while now, and I've learned that I usually trust what the voters tell us.
The Secretary of State in Missouri says he's investigating whether Page may have violated campaign finance disclosure laws, using $5,000 in public money to put out materials that described the impact of Prop B in a negative light. Page said he'll fully cooperate with that investigation, but believes it will clear him of any wrongdoing. Missouri's Attorney General is pushing a new rule that could change how you access certain corners of the internet. It would require websites with pornographic content to verify its users are 18 years old or older, not just by clicking a button, but uploading a government ID or a digital data that ties your age to it. Andrew Bailey says his goal is to stop kids from getting easy online access to adult content. But for adults, his push may raise questions about privacy, like who's collecting your information? Where's it going? What happens if it gets hacked? The rule at the state level would also force search engines to blur any explicit images unless they verify the user's age. And major platforms online might face big fines, up to $10,000 a day, if they don't comply. It would make Missouri one of the strictest states in the nation on the issue, and because it's just a proposed rule, not a law yet, likely to get challenged in court. We're about to get a big clue about the future of Illinois politics. The Cook County Democratic Party accepts papers from candidates seeking their official slating support this week. And in years past, Senator Dick Durbin has filed with them. He hasn't yet. He's indicated recently he's mulling over this big decision about whether or not to run again. He'd be 80 by the time voters cast their ballots. If he doesn't seek re-election, it would invite a long line of ambitious politicians, like some of these names here, to jump into a statewide primary. Congressman Roger Krishnamurthy, maybe Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, or perhaps Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. When we come back, we pay our respects to a fierce government watchdog who died unexpectedly. Before we go this week, it's time to enter a somber note into the record. The St. Louis Press Corps lost one of our own this week. Nick Pister died unexpectedly Tuesday. He was 43. Nick was an aggressive muckraker, an old-school journalist with a capital J. You would have liked him. He was a dear friend to reporters in this town. The former newspaperman went on to write books and investigate for national network TV stories. But through his travels and career highlights, he remained in love with his hometown. He exercised his friendship and alliances with beat reporters on a regular basis, reaching out with tips, insights, or just encouragement. He had a keen sense and a deep distaste for corruption. His sharp instincts kept politicians on the straight and narrow, and if or when they swerved off of it, his reporting would hold them accountable. Sometimes it cost them their jobs. You might not have known him personally, but he was your friend. Even if you never met him, he was looking out for your interest in rooms maybe you've never been in. And his reporting, his written and televised works, will live on, only as a fraction of the light that he brought into this world. We'll miss him. I didn't get to know him very well, or for all that long before his untimely death, but in the last conversation we had, he was looking for ways to make good trouble down at City Hall, to break down barriers, and open up new spaces like this for journalism to thrive in a city of shadows that could use a few more spotlights around town. Nick wielded his words with purpose. His voice will speak on long after this broadcast ends. Until this time next week, we're off the record.